Our topic today in our Tools for Reliability Engineers sessions is managing condition monitoring and walk-around inspection program performance. Specifically, what we're going to be talking about is three different areas. The first is schedule adherence. Are you actually getting the condition monitoring task and the rounds logging, process parameter walk-around inspections done on the schedule that you expect? The second area we're going to look at is out of those task and rounds logging inspections, do you have locations that are at risk? So the first compartment is schedule oriented. The second compartment we're going to talk about is, are you really getting the locations covered? Are they being missed? Or in fact, are you seeing that you've got some at risk because you're developing some serious repetitive problem areas? And finally, on the third compartment, we're going to look at the actual program performance. Are you actually getting the follow-up and teamwork that you would like to get from reliability, maintenance, and operations, so that when these condition-based problems are being reported, that timely follow-up is occurring and you're helping achieve one of the primary goals of eliminating your failures and service issues. So with that, we're going to cover about 8 reports, and I've got PowerPoint slides, and we're going to be working a lot more in live databases that we have permission to show you. So in the first compartment of schedule adherence, we're going to cover the 2 areas of condition task assessment metric and task adherence, and then separately we're going to look at rounds logging route adherence. So to do that, I'm going to go to a database that one of our customers has given us permission to use. It's Municipal Sewer District in Cincinnati. And to look at the condition task metrics, you'll go to the services area at the bottom of the tree on the left-hand side of the screen. The report is called Condition Assessment Task Metrics. So again, I have Condition Assessment Task Metrics, and very quickly, I'm going to, for those of you that aren't familiar, you can click the Asset Tree button at the top left to hide or expose the asset tree and give your reports more screen real estate. So this gives me an entire list of all of the tasks that have been assigned. One of the things I like to do is, in this case, the default view kind of mixes or isn't ordered according to route adherence. If I just go over and click the column header, I can reorder this, and now I find that I've got several of these that are at 100% in the time period from about a year ago, from September of 19 to August of 2020. And you'll see again, once again, it shows me how many items are on each task, how many times that task was assigned, and how many times we covered the items and found problems versus measurement, no problems, versus we assessed the location as not being measured for some reason, such as not be accessible, not having time, etc. In this case, these guys were actually doing pretty good. They got a long list that are 100%. But if I really shoot on down to the bottom of their list, and again, you can see this is a large database that they've been building, or they've got lots of routes that they've been doing in a variety of technologies. So even the ones that are in the 90s and 80%, I'm probably not too worried about, because they may only be missing one assignment out of 2 that were expected or something like that. But when I get down to the much lower areas, that's where I want to really start taking note probably of, let's get down below 50%. I got some down here at 40%, 33%, a variety of types, ultrasonics, electrical online, some route vibration. Don't see too much thermography. There's a thermography task. So I probably ought to be taking time to really review whether or not these tasks need to be active, whether these locations, whether we actually intend to monitor them, or maybe I've got a COVID-19 problem and I don't have manpower in the plant is the reason that this has been impacted the way it has. But this gives you the ability to look through this list and decide which ones you need to target to investigate and clean up your program, so that you're really being realistic in what you expect to be on the schedule, so that you don't end up with low numbers because nobody ever expected to monitor those tasks in the first place. On this particular task, you can export this to Excel via CSV file, and so you can actually put this in Excel and play with it in a lot more ways. So that's condition task route adherence and the way to look at those kind of details. If I want to look at rounds logging, walk around inspection, I'm going to go to a different database. There's a paper plant in the Northwest U.S. that before it changed ownership was using TANGO, and they did a lot of walk around inspections, particularly a lot of lube routes. So I'm going to set my filters to look at their performance in the year 2013. Forrest, you got anything to add about condition task?
Yeah, there's always a lot there, but you've got, the task or your inventory of all the equipment you're monitoring. So it's not uncommon that we'll have people ask us, what's the percentage that I'm monitoring out of the whole database that's in TANGO? Sometimes we'll be asked for Excel spreadsheets of all the assets and what technologies they're being applied to. So there's a number of things that you may need for your assessments, for your management reports, that may not have reports in TANGO. There, what you're probably going to want to do is just call Chris in support and ask him to run a SQL query and bring you that information.
Okay. Let me explain how this report is built. There is a pretty fundamental difference between the way you operate in TANGO with your condition monitoring assessment task and the walk-around process parameter task or routes that are set up in rounds logging. And the fact is that with a condition assessment task, you have to assess 100% of the locations that are in that task before that assignment can be closed. That requirement does not apply to the walk-around inspections and rounds logging, so therefore I could simply have, if I had 100 points on a route, there might be 10 or 20 of those that I simply didn't put any data in at all to give any indication that I made the attempt or that there was an attempt to record the information. So therefore we record route adherence with two terms. We look at the number of times a route was completed within a schedule of how many times it should have been completed. We also look at how many points should have been actually measured, even though some of those points could be measured and documented as I didn't measure this one because the equipment was down or the equipment was not available due to electrical lockout, etc. It would still be down in that case as well. But this is also a very interactive report. So if I want to take a look, again, I'm looking at about a 63% completion rate on the number of times that I ran the routes. I'm looking at a 71% adherence on the number of times I actually got all of the points measured that I expected. So if I start, you dig into this by, and again, I'm going to expand the tree or hide the tree. So I see that I've got 0% on this 5 p.m. third quarter motors anytime lube route, and yet I'm at 100% on the 5 p.m. fourth quarter. Let's go down to the 83, the one that says 83%, and that'll give us a little closer look. In fact, on the 10 p.m. daily, a route that I'm running once a day, 7 times a week, this gives me an iteration of every time that route was run during 2013, how many times it was completed. So in some cases, I ran it 1 time as I was supposed to. Others, I ran it 0 times, and they must have had a shift overlap, and maybe one guy ran it at 10 in the morning and another guy might have run it at 11 at night. And so it kind of still fell within the 2 hours, but it was completed 2 times. This also tells me how many times my points were measured okay, how many times I had some potential problem reported. So out of this entire year, I had 1,183 reports. Of course, you're saying if I was at 83% of 360 days, I've got about 10 a day, I guess, that are being reported. And the most important thing is I didn't mark any of these points as being not measured for some valid reason. However, I had a huge number of points that did not get entered at all. They just didn't give me any data about that point. This would lead me to look at this route and wonder if taking it daily was too much, or whether in fact the 8,200 missed points with no data entered at all means I've just got points on that route that no one seems to care about, that they don't have time to get to, or not going to pay attention to if it gets measured. So it may give me a choice to refine that particular route by looking at this data. So once again, all of that information is in this route adherence report for your process parameters, so you can start to see which ones are being taken care of, like again, both 100% of completions and 100% of route point adherence, versus one that, boy, this shutdown route, for example, or this group of shutdown routes for 5 paper machines, I really wonder if we mean to do those or not, or if I do, I need to manage it so I get that 20% and that 3% number way up. Okay, so that's route adherence. Go back to our next bundle.
Let's back up for a couple of
Okay.
things I want to say about questions I get a lot are I've got a lot of redundant machines, so my task metrics are showing 50% completion rather than 100%, which it should have. And so one of the things that you can do if you have redundant machines is take one of your assessment states, mark it as redundant or assessment, and we'll fix that so that it doesn't count against you as not measured. So that will fix reporting problems if you have a lot of redundant machinery.
Okay.
And another thing that reassessments is another tool that if you complete a task, if you have a 30-day task, reassessments aren't real valuable to you because you're probably going to redo that task fairly quickly. But let's say I have a quarterly or semi-annual or annual task, and I'm committed that I want to get everything on that task during, let's say it's every 180 days, and I want to get everything on that task, but the first time I'm out, I only get half of what's on the task. Tango builds what's called a reassessment task with everything that's in alarm and everything that's missed, and you can now redo the reassessment task the next time. Let's say you get half of that again, so now you're at 3/4 of the initial task with 25% hanging out. Another reassessment task is built, and you keep whittling that down until you get the complete task done.
So that's a good point, and that's you get to that reassessment area by going to the services at the bottom of the tree, condition assessment services area, go to the condition assessment task control, and on the create assignment panel, you'll see a column called reassessments. And as far as said, this particular IR mechanical task may have had 100 items in it to start with, but as of this point, it hasn't been closed, and it hasn't come up for being due to start on the next cycle either. So I have the ability to do the 2 items remaining. I don't see the 98 that might already be completed.
Yep.
And so I can reassign that to a different person if necessary to complete.
So essentially that's just a way of completing a task that usually has a long interval. So you can go into it and out of it multiple times, putting in the results.
Okay. All right, let's move on. We're going to go into our second area, which is finding out about equipment locations at risk. Even if my schedule compliance is looking pretty good, how many of those items have in fact validly been missed or noted as not measured? Or maybe I've got issues where I've got repetitive problems and I need to be monitoring even more closely perhaps. One of the first items that we're going to look at, or big reports, is the asset health report. Now this is a report that I can run for the entire database. I can go down to services and run it from there, and if I click asset health report here, it would run it for the entire database, or I can go to any individual unit or functional service location, and I can go to other reports, and I'll see asset health report there, and this one would be filtered to only show me the asset health for the Little Miami plant or at that unit level. Okay. I'm going to go ahead for this company and look at it company-wide since they've got 7 different treatment plants. And just to display, I'm going to start by looking at the individual units. So if I'm doing a management presentation, for example, and I want to give a comparison of overall how the different these 7 different units are looking, basically I'm filtering and showing only the 7 units over here. And what this report is doing is showing me all of the condition monitoring task or walk around inspection activities that are generating condition entries, and it's showing me when condition entries have been generated, or actually the last measurement, I should say. If it's a condition entry that was done during that last time period or any of that that's open, it would show me the date and the box would be in red. If everything at that point had been measured no problem, then it would be green. And it shows it by technology and an overall calculation. Here you also get to see how many locations are being assessed as of this date. So I've got 7 unit locations, and that's why it's saying I'm looking at 7 units. And in fact, you'll see that overall, it looks like to me that the sewer district is in pretty good shape with their coverage, because most of these are July or August of 2020 for vibration and oil labs. Looks pretty current for electrical offline testing. Looks pretty good. Maybe starting to get a little slack. It's been since March or February in a couple of the units since some ultrasonic testing was done. Thermography definitely looks pretty good. My visual inspections start to look a little worse. I've got some that haven't been done since 2013, 2018, or 2019. So, et cetera. You see how this gives me that overall picture. Now, if I want to look a little closer, I'm going to go back and filter this same report a little differently by going down to the asset. I could go all the way down to the asset component level. I'm just going to run this one at the asset. I think you'll find many of our customers find that this is an excellent level of report, not only for their quick analysis of are they behind in any areas or have an overwhelming number of problems being reported in areas, but also as a management tool if you need to show a quick status and numbers. So here, since I'm at the asset level, machine train level, if you will, you'll see that I'm covering much larger numbers. I'm covering 532 assets for vibration, 321 with oil lab, 560 with offline electrical, almost 1,000 with thermography. Overall, I'm covering 1,514 asset levels. And this gives me a quick picture of which of those particular assets are giving me the most, if you will, trouble, and whether or not the data is fairly current. So I'm in pretty good shape on saying that I've got only one problem really being reported, it looks like, on from ultrasonics on this particular scrubber number 2. But if I scroll down, I may find some other areas where looks like they don't have. Here's one with a comment. Yellow means that there's a condition comment against that component location. And I have a couple of 4-month-old condition entry items from which technology, ultrasonics and thermography. So once again, that particularly if I start to see lots of red bars across here, I know I've got lots of technologies that are showing me lots of problems on that particular item. Now, if I want to, this doesn't give me any information about this is what was measured. So it's actually showing me that it was measured with a measured no problem being green, or a condition comment being yellow, or a condition entry being made as red, but it doesn't tell me anything about what's being missed in these areas. So to do that, I have a report called the Locations Not Measured report. That's under in the services area, under plant level. Pick January 1st is, I want to know if there's anything that we haven't measured that's on a task. I could say that for everything in the database by clicking this item for show locations not on a task.
Where are you running this from the whole database?
Yeah.
Let's do this a little differently. Go up and filter. Go to Little Miami.
Little Miami or Mill Creek?
Go to Mill Creek.
Mill Creek's a good one.
Go to open Mill Creek to the function level.
Oh.
Open it again.
You want to go to the function, okay.
All right. Mill Creek functions. All right, so let's go to influence pumps. Now let's run it for the influence pump area, because there's probably a route for influence pump vibration and electrical and things like that. So let's do it for the influence pump.
So far as that's a good point. This basically says I don't have to look at it for the whole database. I can start to look just down at an individual area, particularly if I know that I've got tasks that might be set up specific to that one functional area.
So let's run this for the whole year. So let's look to see if there's anything that's on our task, but it hasn't been measured this year. That obviously wouldn't be a good thing. We were over half the year, and they probably should have it measured by now, at least once.
Okay.
All right, so let's go. And you go into any technology.
Yeah. Normally
I find it more when I'm using it, I'll do it by a technology, but
well, that's where you're really, maybe you've got issues with those dates, for example, in your asset health report showing an old 2019 date for a particular technology in an area, then you could come back and filter just as far as to saying by that technology and find out which locations they're missing, and whether there's a good reason.
All right, so let's look at the top there. You got 64 total locations in the Mill Creek influence pump area. You've got 49 of those locations are on task. So for whatever reason, some of those locations are not in a task. 45 of those 49 locations that are on task have been measured. Locations not measured, 10 have not been measured. The difference there is there's multiple technologies in here, so they obviously some have been not measured more than once by more than one technology. So if you had just one technology, then it'd just be a simple subtraction there.
So again, this is all because you're looking for, and quite honestly, this particular sewer district, I recall many years ago, asked us to design this report, and they had a lot of good ideas about how to do it, but one of the reasons was they were sending thermographers or ultrasonic techs around to these different sewer plants, and unfortunately, a lot of times the operators simply were not giving them permission to access the equipment, and they wanted, in this case, not only to manage it, make sure their techs were documenting information properly, but they wanted to be able to go back to management and have very detailed information about which ones they had had to miss for a particular reason. So it was giving the status, and I think I can filter by that.
By technology, you mean?
No, by assessment state.
See that date last measured column?
All right.
So, I mean, that column tells you a lot. See, there's one that hadn't been measured since 13 on vibration route.
Exactly, okay.
So either that machine just permanently decommissioned or they can't get to it. Some reliability engineer should be looking at this and asking some questions. Is that machine really important? Should it be on a task? Why haven't we gotten it? Can we take it off the task? So there's some real good questions that should be answered about, these components and assets.
Okay. So once again, that's the locations not measured report. You can run it for the whole database from the services area under plant level reports, right there, or you can go back to any down to a functional location or actually an asset level and run it for that, and get the same information.
Run it again, but just for vibration, just to show people. So click through it again. So influence pumps. I use this report a good bit, just because if you've missed equipment, you want to know about it, and you don't want it to surprise you. And so it's always good to know the things that haven't been measured, even though you think maybe they're out of sight and out of mind today. You need to know about them and make sure that you prepare the operators or do whatever you're going to need to do to get into and measure that machine.
So again, vibration's one of the offenders here. They must have, because none of the vibration for that particular functional location have been done since 2013.
Raw sewage pump, 10, 11, and so you got 26 locations that should be measured, 20 that actually have been measured. So there's 6 locations that haven't been measured at all since whatever time period.
Okay, and these are the 6 right here that it's been 2013 since any of those 6 have been measured. So they've just stopped attempting, apparently.
Well, and there could be some good reasons. Those could be decommissioned and removed. They could be inaccessible. They could be spares. I mean, so anyway, somebody needs to answer a few questions about them.
Okay, so let's, while we're still on the topic of finding out what locations you may have at risk, we've just looked at how to find the ones where your insurance policy isn't in place. You're not actually measuring them when you think you should, and they're showing up as not measured. Let's talk about where we have repetitive failure modes, and that deserves a different level of address. So what I want to do there is run this report called Condition Risk Factor Rating. One of the first things that is helpful if you go to your menu item and say that you want to look at locations based on open and closed condition entries. And this is going to look at all the history that's in the database. You can set a date range if you want, I think. And if you now have this list, you can go to the case count, and you'll now highlight that, in fact, I've got some locations, several motors that have 9 separate cases. And again, in Tango, I may have watched a particular motor bearing problem, for example, for 3, 4, 5, 6 months on a monthly vibration route, and I might have had 6 different condition entries in that one case. What this is saying is that I've got 9 separate cases over the history of this motor. And if I want to actually take a closer look, I can go to the menu item for that particular 60 horsepower DC motor that's on the SEC thickening asset. I can locate it in the tree. And I now have the details about each one of these routes, some as recent as a week ago, 10 days ago, all the way back to ultrasonic condition entries from back in April of 2013. So that helps me pinpoint that maybe I need to put a little more focus on why I'm having repetitive failure modes on this particular motor. And if I want to analyze that and get a little more detail, I can go into the at the asset level, I'm going to go to condition entry analysis for this asset that this motor is on. I'm going to look at the fault distribution report. I want to look at all the information. I'm just going to leave that as a default and apply the filter. And now what I want to do is to start looking at the raw data. And this tells me that I've had 6 issues with lubrication. I say that could, in fact, be a root cause that I need to look at more closely that has resulted in failures of bearings, both in early and advanced stage issues. And again, that's just a quick way to dig into finding through that risk report which locations have had lots of repetitive condition entry cases against them, and then go to it in the tree, run the condition entry analysis, and look at the fault distribution for that particular location, and give you a quick look without having to open each of these condition entries. Now, obviously, I could go back and do more homework by opening the details, by viewing this condition entry, and I'd see everything for the finding and recommendations that the analyst made on each occasion of a condition entry. Forrest, any other comments on how you use go about finding those?
It's about got it.
Okay. All right, so we're going to move on into our third area of tools to use for this, and that's going to be...
Hello, Dick.
Yes.
Notice about that condition entry analysis report. If you hit that view report button on down past the list, it does give you those bar graphs that are interactive as well.
Yeah, this one gives you a graphic look, and probably I find that more helpful when I'm looking at a group of maybe a functional area or a unit area, because then I'm getting a categorization of what my most dominant fault modes are, which types of equipment they're on. When I'm looking at it for one location, it's going to be just the information for that location, of course. But that's good. That's a good point. It's got all of the bar graphs to kind of draw the picture for you, in addition to having the rows that you can export to Excel and manipulate for raw data. All right, now we're going to talk about the third area, and that's how's my program running? And particularly I'm talking about the area of how is my interaction between the reliability group, the condition monitoring technicians, the walk-around inspection people that are doing that work. How's it working for follow-up by maintenance planners and maintenance supervisors and operators, and giving permission or making it possible for the work to be scheduled when it really ought to be? For that, we're going to talk about a couple of different areas. The first and primary is always, in my mind, going to be the integrated condition status dashboard. So I'm just going to go to a single unit. Once again, I can run this ICSR for the whole plant by going to the taskbar at the top and clicking the ICSR button, or I can come to any level of the tree. I'm going to look just at the unit of Mill Creek, and I'm going to run the integrated condition status report for Mill Creek. And without worrying about the pie charts, to me, the key issue of whether or not I'm getting cooperation is in this days awaiting checkoff number. So if I've got an item here that is very high level severity, actually it's a medium severity in their terms, that's an electrical online test, and yet it's been out there for 272 days, I'm kind of wondering, even though it tells me it's in progress, I'd like to know a lot more probably about why is it taking that long for this work order to actually come to closure, get checked off, so that we could proceed with re-inspecting this particular screen and closing the case on it. I got some others that are out here at 136 days. 78 days probably doesn't worry me too much. But this ICSR and this days awaiting checkoff is a very powerful tool in helping understand in the short term how the work that's in front of me is being done and being handled by the whole team of reliability, maintenance execution, and operations.
Click the quick metrics button for a moment. The number that goes along with that. See the third box, bottom item, mean time to repair. All right, so that's 100 days. I think if it looks at everything that was closed in the last month and it calculates the mean time that it took to close it. And so on the average, it's taking them 100 days to close a condition entry. That's not great. It's not terrible. I've seen a lot worse. I don't usually see a whole lot of that's better than that.
And we're going to talk a little bit at the very end about this, how to set up this quick metrics and what it can do for you. Let me close on the issue or the item of how to kind of look at this teamwork status between reliability, maintenance, and operations. And once again, we're going to go to a couple of the different charts that are available in the condition entry analysis. And in this case, I'm going to go to the entire, let's do Mill Creek since we were looking at that. I'm going to look at the condition entry analysis for Mill Creek, but I'm going to go not to fault distribution. I'm going to look at the condition entry trends information. And once again, I'm going to look at everything that's generated. You'll see that they've been at this for over 8 years with data at Mill Creek. And this will give me a count of history of how many condition entries have been opened, how many condition entries were closed this month. And I'm going to scroll down to some that I think are more the real gold in these reports. How many condition entries were opened this month and closed in the same month. Now I start to get to the information I want. What's my average days of closure? Now this is for how many were closed in a month. So if it got closed in the month of January, then it tells me that there were 61 items. January is 63 items, but that I don't know how long those were open. One of the more important ones for me are, and again, I could look at the same thing for if a condition entry was opened this month, how many times has it taken, how long has it taken to close it? So obviously in that case, if I've just opened condition entries in June or July, I have a very limited number of days to close. So I've only had, that's going to tail down. If I go to this last two items, this tells me my volume of condition entries that are open at any given point in time. This tells me that this program at the sewer district, for some reason, just maybe started to get out of control or something went awry a little bit, and they ended up with as much as 120 or 30 that were open at one point in time at the end of 2019. And it looks to me like they certainly spent a lot of time during 2019 to get that down and then tried to keep it under control. However, I'm wondering if this wasn't in June maybe a reason or a result of the COVID issues and whether they had maybe some manpower issues in being able to continue that record. But they saw that ramp up and they worked hard to get it down. And when you look at this one here, you also, this is the graph that if for a program that I think is being successful, if it's been, not that one, the one that's, I'd like to see these average days to close really trending downward over time. If I've had a program running for 7 years like this at that particular Mill Creek plant, I'd sure like to see it not still up there maybe around 200, 175 or 200 days. I'd like to see better indications of more of a downward trend over that time. Our friends that we've worked with at Eastman Chemical, for example, in an SMRP presentation we did 15 years ago with them, had an interesting set of statistics since they'd already been at the condition monitoring, in the condition monitoring business in a big way for over 20 years by then. They had a lot of history, and they had studied and realized that they were making calls, condition entry type reports, if you will, on up to 20%, 25% of the assets the components being monitored in the early stages of their programs. But as they became more mature and they took on activities like Tango to help improve the communications and the accountability for executing, for taking action on those reported condition-based problems, they were driving that down to 3% and under of the number of assets being monitored. And what that allowed them to do was to make some adjustments over time. This was over a 10-year period or more. It allowed them to make adjustments so that they were reassigning some of the personnel by saying maybe we don't need to be doing that monitoring every 30 days, that vibration route. We can do it every 60 days or maybe even 90. And we can take those extra man hours, and they assign some of those techs to become more active in starting some root cause investigations and looking to mitigate the reasons that they might have been predicting problems over and over. So looking at that programmatic approach of how long it's taking me once a condition entry is opened to how long it takes to get closure can be very powerful. And that graph, and when you see a nice downward trend in it, it's a wonderful thing to be able to go show management. Forrest, anything else for I guess we were going to cover quick metrics here as well. And so I want to, for those of you that haven't used quick metrics, it's based on not only the reports that we've looked at, but many of the others that are in Tango. If you can set those up by clicking the quick metrics button on the taskbar. These can be custom designed for which ones you want to show up for an individual user. And this one shows me, for example, a quick look at the previous month on assessment task metrics and how many condition tasks I was due to have done in this mid-July to mid-August time frame versus how many actually got completed. So we're actually a little ahead of schedule. This is a summary of the numbers that are in the asset health report that we looked at. Very quickly, the way to set this up is in the settings button, and you choose widgets. You decide which of these, this shows me the three that I've already selected. If I wanted to turn on, for example, this is coming from the condition entry analysis, what my top 5 faults were, and I saved that, then I'm going to see this on my screen. So it's very quick. If you actually want to set these up as a default that stay there for day after day, week after week, you can do that. Or if you want to toggle through and look at a particular one very quickly, you can simply very quickly go to the settings, click that widget on, and you'll see it on the report.
I like this. I've just been following it on a different computer to get mine set similar to what you have there, but and it seems to work very well. I need to find a way to encourage the planners and the schedulers to be able to use Tango more. It seems I always have 1 or 2 guys that are open to learning new processes and new programs. So we're still forging ahead.
Well, I'll bring up another complete topic. It's not a short answer. And in fact, I think we'll be doing a go-to-meeting within the next 30 days in detail on it. And that's a concept that one of the reliability engineers that we've dealt with for several years in the petrochemical industry actually came up with, and he labeled it red meetings. I mean, it's not proprietary by any means, but it was a series, a consistent set of semi-monthly or monthly reviews where they focused on the integrated condition status report and would go through. He considered anything that made the report a red that needed to be reviewed and status comments updated in that column out to the right-hand side, and particularly driving that toward closure. So it was by creating this meeting where they had to review the information. And
right. Was that in the RIM article that was posted where they did the red meetings?
Yes, that's one of the best practices that, like I said, I think we've got a best practices talk on that within the foreseeable future.
In fact, One of the clients, steel mill, implemented red meetings about a year ago, and they've just been phenomenally successful in getting their area engineers and their planners paying attention to things.
Okay, well, that's a good question. Anything else?
I'm good.
All right.
Okay, well, we sure appreciate everyone's participation, and we'll look forward to the next topic, I think, in another, I think it's 2 to 3 weeks on section number 3 for reliability tools. And we'll be digging into some tools for root cause case management. So
Great.
hope to see you then. Y'all take care.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, guys. That's great.